Kia ora e te whānau. This is Pania at FreshFM, and today in the studio I have Nick Clarke from Habitat for Humanity. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks so much, Pania. Great to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming along. So what's your role at Habitat for Humanity? What do you do there?
So my role's, the title's General Manager, which means you do a lot of everything, I think. So lead really the work of Habitat around Nelson and Tasman. We have housing programs, which obviously we'll be talking a lot about. We also have a couple of charity shops, the Restore, the big one down in the hub, one in Motueka, a cafe as a social enterprise we started called Nook, and then the hub with tenants and so on as well. So it's basically to try and drive the mission of Habitat around the district.
Okay, what is the mission of Habitat for Humanity?
Basic idea of Habitat is that everyone deserves a decent place to live. So, you know, Pania, what we're trying to do is get people into decent homes. And the reason we do that is because we're saying, well, look, if people are in decent homes, everyone deserves access to a decent place to live. They have stability, they have shelter, they have the ability to be more self-reliant.
And I'd imagine that would have a ripple effect for the rest of society.
Yeah, what we notice is if people, in a way it's not really rocket science, is it? If people know that they have a secure place to be, where they can live and do life together as family, and whatever combination that looks like, they know they're in a secure place. They will engage better, they can go through the ups and downs of life. That kind of place called home is a place of sanctuary, and you have the high highs of life and the low lows, but you do that together and it's a safe space. And I think then beyond that, you know that you've got a microcosm of community as family. If you're going to be in an area and you know you're going to be there for as long as you choose to be, whether you're in an affordable rental that has security of tenure and you can afford the rent, or whether you are moving towards home ownership, you're going to engage in your neighbourhood because you're not going to be worrying about whether you have to shift on, which is a real challenge for many people in our society.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if you know you're going to stick around, you're able to invest in your community. But also I would imagine, you know, if you don't have secure housing, then your basic needs are not being met. So that's all you're focused on.
Totally right.
Really is just survival and making sure you've got a dry, warm home over your head.
And there's a whole lot of indicators around security of homes, whether that is rental or ownership, that around improved mental health and well-being, improved physical health, etc., etc.
So, who is Habitat for Humanity for? Who does it help?
Well, Habitat for Humanity is an organisation that started in the US in the mid-70s, and it was a church-based response to homelessness in the US, and it grew. So now it works in over 70 countries around the globe, and had been working in New Zealand since the mid-80s and in Nelson since the mid-90s. And basically, its aim is to help anybody who needs a decent place to live. The focus has generally been on sort of rental or rental into home ownership, and the main bit being a progressive home ownership program. We found actually in Nelson around the time of COVID, we were working with other partners in the community to help address more of the transitional emergency housing end as well. So we've got a wee partnership pilot program working with Housing First and a local church on that called Cabins for Community with Victoria down Vanguard Street. But the main emphasis is on home ownership because we see that unlocks a whole lot of things for people.
So how does it work? How does a person, say a person's listening to this right now and they're thinking, well, I don't have secure home ownership, let alone, you know, even my rental's not secure. The whole idea of owning a home is just totally out of reach. But this sounds like something I might be able to access. How would it all work? How does it unfold?
Can happen in one of two ways. So one way is to just contact our office at the hub and just let the team know there. Talk to Kia ora, our support coordinator, who can explain a bit about our program. If you think that's something you're interested in, then we can put you on a waiting list. That can feel a bit dispiriting, really, isn't it? Because you can only move as fast as the houses you can produce. But when we have programs coming, we advertise publicly. So, for example, the 14 homes we just recently completed in Stoke, we had a number of meetings around the community at different times of the day and in the weekends, some with translation for members of our community where English is their more likely second, third, fourth or fifth language. So they get to hear about the program, understand the program and see if that's something they'd like to pursue, and then they can make an application and we guide them through that.
So people who are involved with the Habitat for Humanity program, do they help to build their own homes?
They contribute what's called sweat equity. So many years ago, yes, they would be physically helping to build their own homes. Now, quite wisely, with improved health and safety legislation, there's different places where families and whānau mitre support can help to contribute, and that tends to be around interior painting. So we've had our partner families in Stoke busily painting the insides of their houses for weeks as they were getting them ready. Outside landscaping, fencing, gardens, planting, all that kind of thing. And it's a really nice thing because what happens is you come with your wide whānau to do this and contribute. You have a good time, you get a barbecue going as well. But when you've got 14 homes doing this, then you're all interacting with one another as well, and that's really neat.
Yeah, that does sound.
So it's good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about the new Stoke development. That sounds really interesting. Did you say 14 new homes? Yeah,
so we just dedicated our development just behind Elam Church and along from Stoke Primary School about a week ago. We built 14 homes there. 12 of them are 2 and 3 bedroom homes, 6 of each for families as part of our progressive home ownership program. So those families are shifting in, and they're in there now, and they are starting what is generally a 5-year journey into home ownership, where they pay a basic rental for their house at a rate that is affordable for them, and over time that forms the basis of their deposit. Combine it with KiwiSaver. We use a mortgage broker who understands the Habitat model, who goes to find bank finance, and in 5 years' time they buy out the balance of the property. The thing is, for them, that they are paying the price that is agreed on completion of the building. So the price they pay is the price the value of the property is today, not in 5 years' time. And the difference for that means that historically, Nelson and Tasman has had property growth of 60%. It's changed a little bit in the last 12 months or so, but it will come up again because it just tends to in this country, rightly or wrongly. So all of that capital gain rests with the family. But what we do during that time is we reinvest the money that's coming in to do more housing, and we get good support from partners to help us to do that.
So what's unique about the Stoke development? Is there anything new about that?
Yeah, it's certainly for Habitat. Habitat Nelson, we've never built that number of homes before. So that's been a real game changer for us, and in many respects funding from both government through the Progressive Home Ownership Fund, from City Council, and also from the Rana Foundation have helped us to be able to do that at a different scale than what we've done before. So this is a development that, instead of say having separate townhouses on small plots of land, we have four blocks in this area of semi-detached and attached homes, so that's a different structure. We have it focused around a community area, so we have shared play areas, a playground, communal barbecues, shared workshops, areas for bikes, shared fruit trees, veggie gardens. Vehicles are off to the side of the site, so it's all very pedestrian friendly, and each house has their own patch of ground, but they have this communal area to enjoy as well. So it's a very different model for us, but it works really well, and it resonates well in that area because access to schools, shops, playgrounds, transport routes, bike paths, and so on. So yeah, it's an exciting one for us, and it's also a great aspect because you go upstairs and you look at these houses and you get all these views around the hills, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that you're not just moving into a house that will be your home, you're actually moving into a community that you can, because they're all moving in around about the same time. I guess that means that they build that community together.
Yeah,
that's a really lovely idea.
Yeah, one of the things that was really interesting when we had 88 families apply for 12 homes. Because the other 2 homes are affordable rentals, but so those 12 families, when they were announced, we had a meeting at the hub, and we gave them the number of their house, and we said, go and stand next to your neighbours. And there were these 3 groups. And it was really interesting because they just started talking to one another. And they've got very different backgrounds, they hadn't met one another, and then suddenly what happens is you get WhatsApp groups going, you have people calling out across the supermarket. When we were opening, and then the weeks before we were doing the odd weekend thing down there, you had kids that were playing with one another, because the range of children is about 22 children, I think it is from memory, and they range up to about 16 years. So there's a lot of instant playmates as well, which is really nice. And you see all this kind of stuff going on, and kids riding scooters around, and so it's all starting to happen, which is really, really nice. And the other part with our 2 affordable rentals, one, they're both designed in a way that makes it accessible for people with disabilities. So we have a gentleman and his wife living in one of the units where he needs a lot of support because he has mobility issues following a stroke. The other one, though, is going to be set up for a couple to be like the site grandparents who are just there to accompany. Whatever we do with Habitat, we have support for families as they journey through their ownership pathway, but also so we have Tor as a support worker, but we have volunteers that are whānau support. We wanted someone on that site just to sort of maintain that sort of environment. Think, oh, it's been a while since we've had a barbecue, let's have one together, do a bit of lawn mowing, whatever it happens to be, but just ensure that we're all being good neighbours as well. So we do whatever we can to set it up for success. And it was really interesting because we had a group visiting just before we opened. They wanted to have a look at how we'd done the design of the development. And they said, oh yeah, okay, so this common area in the middle, we know housing providers or others in the community, developers probably I think is what they were really meaning, that would build another block of houses in the middle because you get more houses in. But then you have this big debate about house versus home. And the fundamental thing that we need to try and do across our society is build homes. And it's up to the people who live in those homes to make them homes. But you can incentivise with good design, with good communal areas, with good support, etc., etc. And so that's what we're hoping we've achieved at Stoke.
Yeah, it sounds like you've laid the platform, laid the ground for greatest possibility of success. The design model sounds really great.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of some communal living situations like Riverside or Christiania in Copenhagen, where they have individual houses, but there are communal living spaces, both green spaces and buildings that everybody can use.
I think that stuff becomes increasingly important because if you're a family and you've come into this country, so you don't have your family supports around you, or your family's scattered around the country, or you're isolated, you want good neighbours. And I think actually some of the things that we've lost, that sort of the art of in Kiwi society, if you want to think in such sort of stereotypical terms, sometimes we've lost the art of being good neighbours and being good friends and supporting one another. So to think about what does it mean to be community, and we know that ideas like this and these examples you've mentioned internationally, and we think about how iwi engage with some of these things, we've got a lot to learn and a lot to grow into those spaces, I think. And there's huge opportunities, and that just makes our societies far more robust and engaged.
How can people listening to this kōrero who are thinking, wow, this is such a great organisation, I'd love to get involved, I'd love to support Habitat for Humanity, how can they support the work that you do?
Number of ways, Pania. We have a range of options for people, really. We have options for volunteering. So we mentioned whānau support. If you want to guide and help families and just journey, a process, if you think of accompaniment, where you just do life a bit together and help them along the way or be good friends to them, there's always opportunities for that. There's opportunities to volunteer at the ReStores and the cafes and at the hub to help people either with the shops with ReStores, with sort of sorting goods that come in, helping with donations, engaging with people who drop things off and processing it and getting it ready for sale. And that could be in anything from clothing to furniture to house parts to toys and books and all that sort of thing. And that tends to be a really happy place to be. A lot of good friendships there that happen. Same with the cafe. We find that on the build programs, we also have people offering support there. And that can look like anything. We have a huge amount of support from local trades organisations who often discount their prices very substantially, or sometimes gift as well, which is phenomenal. So there's lots of different entry points there, and we're always up for new and creative help.
Yeah, so people should just get in touch and say,
please do.
How can I help? These
Absolutely.
are the skills I have. This is what I've got to offer. Does this work for you?
Yeah,
that sounds
and
good.
that can be anything. And we also have other groups in the hub as well, and they also benefit from volunteers. So we sort of try and keep a place where all of those different tenants in the hub can support one another. And that's kind of a nice thing to do too. So there's always a place for someone who wants to give a hand.
Yeah. I was actually in the ReStore with my 14-year-old daughter last year, and she saw a sign saying, we're looking for volunteers. And so she said, I'll do that. And she went up to the front counter and said, how do I become a volunteer? Awesome. So she volunteered, every second Saturday for a few months. She really loved it.
That's great. That's great. It's so good. And actually, for younger people, I think that's really encouraging, all power to it, because actually we want, particularly with younger people, we want people to be engaged and see what the benefits of volunteering is. but also learn. Young people are fantastic leaders in our community for being advocates because they see where they want to change. If you think about, for example, the discussions around climate change and what we need to do with mitigation, oftentimes it's young people leading that, whether it's actually in our community here in Whakatū or whether it's globally. They can bring systemic change. And so if they're in environments where that's modelled and encouraged and they've got older people to help them along the way, sky's the limit.
And that's definitely how my daughter felt at
Yeah,
Restore.
good on her.
There were staff there that helped her and guided her, and she learned new skills. She learned how to use the till. Did she learn how to use the till? I think she was, or she was.
Oh, yeah.
There was something she was doing, but she felt very important.
Good for her.
Yeah.
It's excellent. I've used that tool. She has my admiration. So it's a complex beast.
Yeah. Serious technical skills to operate that thing. One last thing, I guess, just as a there might be some people listening out there who think, oh, I have no problem buying a house. Why is there a need for something like Habitat for Humanity? Could you just outline a little bit about what the challenges are facing people in the Nelson Tasman region on the pathway to trying to buy a house?
Yeah. So if you think about Nelson Tasman, and then look at it in the context of Aotearoa, Nelson Tasman had traditionally been the second and third least affordable place to buy a home in the country. And it may have changed a little bit in the last few months because of property prices going up and down, etc., but it's always in the top 5. It's very, very difficult for people to do that. Home ownership in Nelson Tasman is just under about 57%. So actually there's an awful lot of people who don't own homes here in our region. And that's actually significantly less than the national average. That's compounded by the fact that actually our wage and salary rates are significantly lower than in other parts of the country. So people might resonate with, hear the sound, or actually feel the impact themselves as employees of sunshine wages. It's a great place to live. We don't have to work too hard for it, etc. We also have a lot of primary production, which is fantastic, but some of it's seasonal, or some of our tourism seasonal. All that means that actually people don't have a lot of money to be able to get to a stage where they can get into either home ownership or secure rental on their own. And that's a massive problem. And it's a problem that then creates huge ripples for our society here in Whakatū, because we don't have an engaged community, or we have people that have to move away, not because they want to, but because actually economically it doesn't work for them in their whānau. So that's a massive one. For people who do have their own homes, they know the benefit of that. I mean, I am painfully aware of a lot of discussions where I am involved either with local body or central government or community groups or so on, and we talk about housing and housing need. At the end of the day, I go home to my own home that I'm fortunate enough to own. And I've got to pay a mortgage and all that kind of thing, but I actually have the ability to do that. I'm fortunate enough to do that. Everyone deserves a decent place to live. So we need to actually recognise that for a lot of people, this is something that they just can't get anywhere near unless we give them a hand. And that's really the fundamental thing for us. There's a saying that I've often shared when I used to work in aid and development, and I was working with a Ghanaian who was changing the face of water, sanitation and hygiene across Africa. It's a Ghanaian guy. And he said, look, Nick, we were at this thing once many years ago, and he said, there's a proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the thing that I really like about and feel privileged to be involved with Habitat is that is demonstrated each and every day. Whether you have your daughter coming and volunteering at Restore, whether you have tradespeople producing really high quality, decent homes, and actually often going well above and beyond, whether you have people donating time, gifts, talents, resources. We've had people bequest actually very significant assets, because they believe that actually everyone does deserve a decent place to live and they can see the benefit of that. I think if we're fortunate enough to be homeowners ourselves, sometimes it's hard for us to remember that.